There's a unique kind of pain that settles in your chest when the people you love the most start treating you like you don't matter. You may not even notice it at first. It starts with small things: a missed call, a short reply, a visit that feels more like an obligation than a joyful reunion. You try to brush it off. They're busy, you tell yourself. They've got kids of their own now, work stress, bills to pay. But deep down you feel it, a distance growing wider with each passing month. And one day, you realize something that's difficult to admit even to yourself. Your adult children don't treat you with the respect you once had. Not the kind of respect that's wrapped in words or greetings, but the kind that shows up in how they act, how they speak to you, and whether or not they truly value your presence in their lives. And while love may still be there, respect is something different. Love might make them show up for your birthday, but respect makes them ask how you're really doing. Love might get you a thank you gift on Mother's Day or Father's Day, but respect shows up in regular calls, in listening, in remembering that you're a full person with a voice that still matters. One of the first and most painful signs that this respect has faded is when they only contact you when they need something. You may have noticed this shift over time. They don't call just to say hi. They don't ask how your day was or if you need anything. Instead, the phone rings, and before you've even had time to feel happy they reached out, they're already into the favor. Can you babysit this weekend? I'm running short on rent. Can you help? Do you still have that old lawnmower? On the surface, it seems like they trust you. They know you'll say yes, you always have. But that's exactly the problem. They've come to expect your support without giving any of their emotional presence in return. It's a transactional connection, not a mutual relationship. And over time, that eats away at your sense of value. You start feeling like a resource, not a parent. Like someone they turn to for help, not someone they turn to for connection. What makes this harder is that you love them. You've always loved them, and saying no feels like a betrayal of that love. But when you say yes over and over without receiving anything in return, not appreciation, not interest, not effort, you begin to feel invisible, used. And as much as you try to convince yourself that it's okay, that this is just what happens as kids grow up, something inside you knows it's not right. Because the truth is, you deserve to be more than a backup babysitter, more than a bank, more than a last-minute plan B. You deserve to be respected for the years you gave, the love you poured in, and the wisdom you still carry. That doesn't disappear just because your children turned 18 or got married or had kids of their own. Your role may evolve, but your worth never expires. Sometimes the signs are subtle. Maybe your child shows up for dinner, eats, says thank you, and leaves without helping clean up or asking how you're feeling. Maybe they make jokes at your expense, gentle teasing about your memory, your opinions, your style of parenting, but it leaves you feeling dismissed. Maybe when you try to offer advice, they roll their eyes or respond with sarcasm. Okay, Mom, we get it. Dad, things aren't like they were in your day. It stings. Because behind those comments is an assumption that your experience is no longer valid, that your voice doesn't hold weight. And when that becomes a pattern, it isn't just bad manners. It's a form of erasure. Slowly but surely, they begin treating you like your identity as a parent, as a person, is fading into the background of their lives. You're there when it's convenient, when you're needed, when it serves them. But you're not part of their inner circle. You're not part of the heart of their life the way you once were. And that shift is heartbreaking, even if you don't say it out loud. So what do you do when you realize this is happening? Do you confront them? Do you lash out in anger? Do you swallow your feelings and keep saying yes, hoping one day they'll notice and change? No, you start by reclaiming your power, not through force, not through guilt, but through calm, consistent self-respect. That starts with one simple shift. Stop responding automatically. The next time your child calls asking for a favor, pause. Take a breath. Instead of saying yes right away, say this: let me think about it and get back to you. This one sentence changes everything. It signals that your time and energy are not on demand, that you're not a vending machine of support, that your help is thoughtful, not automatic. You may be surprised how differently they respond when they have to wait. And in that pause, you give yourself the space to ask, do I really want to do this right now? Do I feel respected in this interaction? Am I giving out of love or out of guilt? The answers may not be easy, but they will be honest. And honesty is the first step toward rebuilding a balanced relationship. Another powerful step is to invite connection instead of offering service. Instead of waiting for them to reach out only when they need something, you can gently reach out yourself, not with a favor, but with presence. A short message, just thinking of you. Hope your week is going well. A phone call. I'd love to catch up this weekend, just to talk. A small invitation. Want to join me for lunch? I miss hearing your voice. These may seem simple, but they are acts of dignity. They say, I'm here not just as your helper, but as your parent, your equal, your human connection. If they respond warmly, that's a beautiful opportunity to rebuild. If they ignore or reject the gesture, that tells you something important. It's not rejection of you. It's a reflection of where they are emotionally. And knowing that gives you clarity. What's most important in all of this is remembering that boundaries are not punishments. They are acts of self-respect. Saying no isn't about being cold. It's about honoring your time, your health, your heart. You spent decades giving. You're allowed to ask for mutuality now. You are allowed to want phone calls that don't come with requests. You are allowed to want visits that feel like joy, not errands. You are allowed to want to be seen, not just as a parent, but as a person who still matters. And when you start living from that truth, your children will feel it. They may resist at first. Change is uncomfortable, especially when it requires them to grow up emotionally. But if they truly care, and most of them do beneath the habits, they will adjust. They will rise. And your relationship will evolve into something richer, deeper, more balanced than ever before. And as you begin to shift that dynamic, even in small ways, something else becomes more visible. How often your opinions are dismissed. This is another sign that many parents overlook because it's so wrapped in casual conversation. But once you notice it, you can't unsee it. You'll be speaking about something you genuinely care about, maybe sharing a bit of your experience, a hard-earned insight, or even a personal story, and they interrupt you. Or they change the subject. Or they respond with a quick, yeah, well, that's not really how it works anymore, and move on. It doesn't sound like disrespect in the traditional sense. They're not yelling, not being cruel, but they're sending a clear message. Your voice no longer carries weight. That's the second sign. When your wisdom, your life lessons, and your perspective are constantly brushed aside like they're outdated or irrelevant. And what makes it sting even more is that there was once a time when they hung on every word. When they looked to you for guidance, for direction, for comfort. But now, they act like you couldn't possibly understand the modern world, as though your entire life experience is obsolete just because the calendar turned. That kind of subtle dismissal builds over time. It makes you question whether it's even worth speaking up. You might start holding your thoughts in during conversations, avoiding certain topics, keeping quiet during visits. Not because you don't have anything to say, but because you've learned that your words will be met with resistance or indifference. That's not just hurtful, it's damaging to your self-worth. Because being heard is not a luxury. It's a human need, especially as we grow older, when so much of our identity is tied to connection, to legacy, to being acknowledged for the lives we've lived and the truths we've gathered along the way. But here's what they may not realize. Your wisdom has never been more valuable. You've lived through changing times, through hardship and joy, through losses and victories. You've made mistakes and learned from them. That's not outdated, that's priceless. And just because they have Google at their fingertips doesn't mean they have insight. Just because they're raising their kids in a different time doesn't mean they have nothing to learn from how you raised them. When they dismiss your views, they miss out on a richer, fuller connection. But you don't have to stay silent. You don't have to argue either. There's power in calm, grounded assertion. The next time your input is brushed aside, try something gentle but firm. I understand things are different now, but I'm sharing this because I care. You can take it or leave it, but please don't disregard it. That one sentence can reset the tone of a conversation. It reminds them that you're not trying to control them. You're offering the voice of someone who's walked farther down the road. Whether or not they listen is their choice, but you have every right to speak with confidence and expect basic courtesy in return. And the more you practice this, the stronger your voice becomes, not just in conversation, but in your own heart. You begin to remember that your value doesn't come from how often they agree with you or how quickly they take your advice. Your value comes from the life you've lived and the character you continue to carry. And in many cases, when adult children start to feel that shift, when they realize you're no longer doubting yourself or waiting for validation, they start to adjust their behavior, sometimes without even realizing it. Respect is often learned through example. When you respect yourself, others are more likely to follow suit. But we must also talk about the third sign, which is harder to accept but important to recognize when they make you feel like a burden. This one can creep in slowly, and it often shows up in moments when you need help or ask for support. Maybe you're dealing with a medical appointment and need a ride, or you mention that you're having trouble with technology or errands, or even just ask for company during a difficult week. And instead of compassion or effort, you get sighs, delays, excuses. I'm too busy. Can't you figure it out? Why don't you ask someone else? These aren't just words. They're messages. They tell you that your needs are inconvenient, that your time isn't as important, that your struggles are annoying rather than meaningful. And over time, this can lead to you minimizing your own needs. You stop asking. You start saying, I'll figure it out, even when you're struggling. You pretend to be fine so that you don't push them away further. But inside it hurts, because you were there for them when they cried at 2 a.m., when they were sick, when they were scared, when they failed. You showed up again and again without hesitation. And now, when the roles are reversed, you're met with distance. That emotional imbalance creates a silent grief, one that so many parents carry quietly in their hearts. But here's the truth. Needing support does not make you a burden. Asking for help does not make you weak. You're allowed to need others. You're allowed to ask. And if your children treat those moments with irritation or avoidance, that's a reflection of them, not you. One way to begin healing this is by setting expectations, not demands, not guilt trips, but boundaries that protect your emotional well-being. For example, if your child frequently cancels plans last minute or avoids helping when asked, you might say, I understand you're busy, but when I ask for your help, I'm doing it because I trust you. If that's too much right now, I'd rather you be honest than unreliable. This statement does two things. It gives them an out, which avoids pressure, but it also holds them accountable. It says, my time and needs matter too. That kind of quiet firmness builds emotional respect over time. And perhaps more importantly, it reminds you that your worth is not dependent on how easy you are to deal with. You're not less valuable because you ask for help. If anything, it takes strength to be vulnerable, to reach out, to trust again after being let down. And when you do it with grace and clarity, you teach your children something powerful. That love isn't just about showing up when it's convenient. It's about being present when it counts. That lesson may take time to sink in, but it's one worth planting, even if you don't see the fruits right away. And while you wait, you can give yourself the gift of community in other ways, through friendships, through volunteering, through groups where your voice is heard and honored. Respect isn't just something we seek, it's something we surround ourselves with. And sometimes, the more we build it outside the family, the more we remind our families how to value us too. And it's often during those quiet moments of reflection, those evenings when the house is silent, or the phone hasn't rung for days, that another painful truth begins to surface. It's the fourth sign, one that is perhaps more painful than all the others because it speaks not just to behavior, but to emotional distance, when they never initiate contact. You find yourself always being the one to reach out. You're the one calling to check in, texting to ask how they're doing, suggesting a time to meet, trying to keep the connection alive. And if you didn't reach out, days, maybe even weeks would go by without a word. And the silence isn't just about the absence of sound. It's about the absence of care. It begins to feel like the relationship only exists because you're holding it up like a bridge with only one side being maintained. And over time, this begins to eat away at your sense of value in their life. You start wondering, do they even think of me if I don't remind them? Do I still matter? Have I become an afterthought? It's not about expecting them to call every day or needing constant attention. It's about basic emotional reciprocity. Because in any healthy relationship, parent-child or otherwise, both people contribute to the connection. Both people reach out, check in, show interest. When that balance is missing, the relationship becomes hollow. And the pain of that imbalance is amplified by memory, because you remember when they were little, how their faces lit up when they saw you, how they used to tell you everything. You remember being their anchor, their safe space, their first call when anything good or bad happened. But now, you sometimes find out about their lives through social media or after everything has already happened. Not because you weren't interested, but because you weren't included. That kind of exclusion isn't just hurtful, it's a form of emotional neglect. And what's more, it often gets explained away with excuses like, I've just been so busy, or you know how life gets. But busyness doesn't stop people from reaching out to those they value. People make time for who they care about, even if it's just a quick call, a short message, a moment to say, I'm thinking of you. When that's missing, the message is clear. Even if it's unintentional, your presence is not a priority. But you don't have to sit quietly with that pain. One of the most empowering things you can do in this situation is to stop chasing the connection and start inviting it with clarity. That might sound like, I've noticed I'm always the one reaching out, and I'd really love if you called sometimes just to say hi. I miss hearing from you. It's not about guilt. It's about truth. And if they respond with love and action, then the relationship still has room to grow. But if they dismiss your feelings or say things like, you're overthinking it, or that's just how I am, then you've learned something even more important, that their respect for you is conditional on convenience. And that kind of love is not the kind you should be building your emotional world around. You deserve more. You deserve consistency. You deserve warmth that doesn't have to be chased. That brings us to a deeper layer of this issue. When adult children consistently fail to initiate contact, they may not even realize how deeply it hurts. They may think of you as strong, independent, always okay. They may assume you'll always be there. But strength does not mean we don't feel loneliness. And independence does not mean we don't need love. By naming your needs clearly and calmly, you give them a chance to grow. And you give yourself the dignity of honesty. Because so much of reclaiming control and self-respect is rooted in that. Being honest about what hurts and about what you need. That honesty might feel risky at first, but it's far better than living with unspoken resentment and silent pain. The people who truly care will hear you. They may not change overnight, but they'll try. And those who don't respond, that tells you everything you need to know. You cannot force someone to value you, but you can stop shrinking just to stay in their life. You can stop making excuses for their neglect. You can choose peace over one-sided effort. And as you begin to reclaim that emotional space, you start to see something clearly, the fifth and final sign. The one that's easiest to miss because it hides in politeness. It hides behind phrases like, we've got it handled, or no need. We've already planned that. It shows up when they keep you out of important decisions. When they make plans for the family without consulting you. When they move or change jobs or make big life shifts, and you find out afterward or not at all. When your opinions about your grandchildren's upbringing or family traditions or holidays are treated as optional commentary instead of valued input. This is the kind of subtle exclusion that stings more than open disagreement. Because it's not a fight, it's silence. It's a quiet message that you are no longer essential, just an extra. And it often comes wrapped in a smile, in niceties, in phrases that seem kind but are loaded with separation. This kind of treatment can make you feel invisible in your own family. And what's worse, it's hard to call out, because when you do, you're often told, "We didn't want to bother you," or "We assumed you'd be okay with it." But what they really mean is, "We didn't think it was important to include you." That kind of exclusion is not just about plans, it's about power. It's about who gets to decide, who matters, whose voice shapes the family's future. And when adult children constantly take that power without consultation, they're not just being thoughtless, they're being dismissive. Reclaiming your place in the family dynamic doesn't mean demanding control. It means asserting presence. You can start small with phrases like, "I'd like to be part of that conversation next time," or "I care about how these decisions are made," and "I'd appreciate being included." These are not requests, they're reminders. Reminders that you are still here, still wise, still worthy of a seat at the table. The shift won't happen overnight. Some children will push back. Some may not understand why you're speaking up now. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're no longer willing to be invisible. You're no longer willing to be an afterthought. You've spent decades building your family, nurturing them, loving them, and that legacy deserves respect. Not because you demand it, but because you embody it. And when you begin to speak from that place, not from anger, but from deep, grounded truth, you change the energy of every room you walk into. You remind your children, even if they don't know how to say it yet, that the roots of the family still matter, that you matter. And even as you begin to take these steps, slowly, courageously, intentionally, it's okay to feel a swirl of emotions. You might feel sadness, frustration, even guilt at times, because the process of reclaiming your place in your own family can stir up a lot of buried feelings. It's normal to wonder if speaking up will damage the connection, or whether silence would be safer. But silence, in the long run, only deepens the divide. Speaking your truth may cause short-term discomfort, but it is the only path to long-term healing. And the truth is, your adult children may not even realize how far the gap has grown. They may not have intended to make you feel unimportant. They may simply be caught up in the speed of their own lives, unaware of the emotional impact their choices have had. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does open a door for change. If they're willing to listen and you're willing to speak, something beautiful can begin to shift. That shift doesn't have to be dramatic. It starts in small moments. When you express your needs without apology. When you say, "I'd really like to spend more time with you," instead of pretending you're fine being alone. When you let them know that your presence in their lives isn't something they can take for granted, that you still have love, wisdom, and value to offer. These aren't demands, they're declarations of worth. They send a quiet but powerful message. I'm still here. I still matter. And I will not let myself disappear just because the world around me got louder, faster, and more distracted. It's also important to recognize your own power in this dynamic. You may not control how your children respond, but you do control how you define your self-worth. You are not just a parent. You are a full, complex, deeply valuable human being. You've weathered decades of life, its storms, its joys, its heartaches. You've learned hard lessons and soft ones. You've shown up for others even when no one was showing up for you. That kind of resilience deserves reverence, not dismissal. And if the people around you don't offer that reverence, then it's time to offer it to yourself. Because when you begin to treat yourself with the respect you deserve, others will either rise to meet that standard or reveal that they never intended to. Either way, you gain clarity. And with clarity comes peace. Don't underestimate the impact of your own energy. When you move through the world with quiet confidence, when you stop over-explaining or apologizing for your needs, something shifts, not just in how others treat you, but in how you feel in your own skin. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, rest differently. And that energy is magnetic. It pulls the right kind of people closer and repels those who only benefited from your silence. The more you step into that space, the more you find joy in unexpected places, in friendships, in community, in solitude that doesn't feel like loneliness. You begin to understand that respect, while often desired from others, must first be rooted in yourself. Because no relationship, no matter how precious, should come at the cost of your dignity. If your adult children are willing to grow with you, that is a gift. And if they aren't, that is a lesson. Either way, you continue. You continue with grace, with strength, with the quiet courage of someone who knows that age is not a decline, but a rising, a deepening, a blossoming of wisdom. You have not lost your voice. You're just beginning to use it in a new way. And the people who are meant to walk with you in this season will hear that voice and respond with love. So take a deep breath and remember, it is never too late to shift the story. The pages of your life are still being written, and the chapter you begin now can be the most powerful one yet. Not because it's perfect, but because it's yours, authored by your own clarity, spoken in your own tone, and rooted in your deepest truth. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are a force. And whether your children realize it today or years from now, your presence in their lives is a blessing. But that blessing does not have to come at the cost of your own well-being. You can love them and honor yourself at the same time. That is the true balance. That is the true power. If you found yourself nodding through this video, if something in these words has touched a nerve or brought comfort, know that you are not alone. There's a whole community of people navigating the same terrain, rediscovering their strength, setting new boundaries, and learning that respect is not something you age out of. It's something you grow into with deeper roots and wider branches than ever before. Thank you for spending this time with me and for having the courage to reflect on something so personal and real. If this message resonated with you, if it gave you something to think about or a sense of direction, I invite you to stay connected. This space, this voice, and this journey, it's all part of a larger conversation we're having here at Healthful Living 60+. Because growing older doesn't mean fading away. It means shining brighter with the wisdom, clarity, and self-love that only time can teach. Here, we believe in growing stronger, standing taller, and living more fully, no matter what the world around us says. So let's continue this journey together, with grace, with grit, and with the quiet power that comes from knowing exactly who you are. You're loved, you're worthy, and your story is far from over. Until next time, keep living fully, keep loving bravely, and above all, keep honoring yourself.